Okay, good afternoon, everybody. This is Sharon. I am your session moderator, and welcome to the 2020 Teacher Leader Summit virtual series. You are attending session E092, Continuing Professional Development During COVID-19. We are going to keep all cameras muted, cameras stopped for participants and all mics muted for participants. It helps with the efficient operation of the Zoom platform during the session. If you have any questions or comments, post them in the chat. Thank you. I'll turn everything over to your presenters.
Well, good afternoon. I'm super excited to be here with you today. I am Sandy Little, and I am with Teaching Strategies. I'm the Content and Implementation Partnership Manager. My colleague Sandra Faria is on. She is the Professional Development Director for Teaching Strategies as well, but I think she was just making sure we got off to a smooth start and then scooting off here shortly. So I don't know, Sandra, did you want to say anything?
Thank you, Sandy. Yeah, I will stay on for a bit. This is quite a large group, so I will support by answering questions as they come up in the chat as well.
Awesome, great. Sounds good. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get off to a great start. I want you to look for a second at today's learning objectives, right? We're going to look to see exactly how to create and review a professional development plan, a personal professional development plan, though a little bit different than just a professional development plan for a whole group of people, but one that specifically meets the needs of us as individuals. How do we do that? How do you go through self-evaluation? So we're going to use questions to analyze our plan and to prepare that so that it's specifically for us and supports us in our areas of strength, also in our areas of weakness. And then we're going to use questions to drive change, right? We know that questions help us get to the bottom of everything. And so we're going to take these as opportunities to ask ourselves questions internally, maybe to talk with our peers on the call as well. But we're going to use these questions to drive change. So it sounds like we've got a theme for the day, right? The theme is questions. So, all right. I love a good question, don't you? All right, so I want you to think about and reminisce on your best day ever in the classroom, right? What was your most fabulous experience as a teacher? Think about that day, one of the best days you ever had in the classroom, start to finish. Right? And I bet you're off to a thought process of, well, I don't know if I had one that started at 7:15 and ended at 3:15, the best day ever. You might have to think about, oh, my best day ever in project work, or my best day ever in small groups. Might not have happened start to finish, but I'll bet you know what happened in each of those elements that made you feel like that, right? I want you to take a chance just to think about those experiences. And when you have one of those days or one of those moments, right, sort of makes you feel like a superhero. Sort of makes you, you're like, man, I'm really getting this. I really feel great about what happened in this experience, and I want to find a way to make that happen more often in my classroom. So if you look at these words over top of these superhero capes, right, I want you to think about how you got to those best moments in your classroom. Right? Just for a second, type in the chat something you recall, maybe something you recall about that best moment and how it made you feel. So I'm looking to the chat, and I'm counting on you guys to have an interactive session. It's very complicated when I can't see people's faces, so you have to back me up here and put in the chat. So I don't see any messages yet. But let's think first, what was one of your best moments in the classroom? What did that feel like? What was it, and how did it make you feel? Accomplished. Nice, Laura Haley. Looking for others. Proud. Yep. Happy. Good. Accomplished. Good. When I reached a child who hated school, my heart overflowed. Boy, that's like worth every minute of agony trying to get there, isn't it? Priceless. Good, Elizabeth. Motivated. Used workstations before they were cool in middle school. Oh, wow. We got a middle school person on here. Great. Yeah. Satisfied. Exciting. Child loves to, being told a child loves to come to school. Yeah, there's no greater compliment, really, right? Those are all good things. And why do you suppose those moments happened? I want you to think about what took place before the best day ever, right? And how do we get closer to that, right? Sometimes, though, like in COVID-19, best days look different, right? Today, look at this example of a best day ever. I bet that's not what that teacher thought of as best day ever 2 years ago, right? But look at what this child and teacher have been able to do. Today, we started our insect study. We read a book about ladybugs, and the student conducted research on their own. We didn't choose virtual learning, but we're making it work. Perfectly imperfect preschool. Look at that. That is so exciting that a teacher just took a chance, worked to try to find a solution, and then celebrated. One of your children is writing their name now. That's great. Relationships built from the heart. Excellent. Yes. All of these things. But knowing that each and every day, as life evolves and as school might begin to change for us, best days may have a very different look and feel, but we've got to figure out how we get to the bottom of that. How do we get control of our professional planning? And I think that really is most importantly what you've just done, right? You've reflected on your practice. You've thought about moments that made you proud, that made you feel satisfied, that gave you a sense of accomplishment. Sometimes we spend a lot of time focusing on how we feel we failed, right? And we do that because it's largely how we have been evaluated over time. But I want you to think about the way we ask you to evaluate young children, right? And to think about their successes as learners. I want you to think about your successes as we begin to think about your professional development plan. How did you get to those successes? And knowing that and reflecting on that will help you get to figuring out how to make those things that maybe aren't so successful your new successes. So we're going to take control of your own professional development plan, taking at the helm your own responsibility in your professional growth, just as you have today by hopping on this webinar to be part of the learning journey today in our Zoom call. So let's take a look at what would have had to happen to have a successful day, an entire day. Look at all the things or some of the things that you do. The list is very exhaustive, right? If you just read it, it kind of makes you tired. There's a lot of words on that page. Small group instruction, morning welcome, sharing information with families, involving families, gathering interest materials, organization of materials, large group, end of the day, transitions, incorporating music and movement, asking open-ended questions, individualizing experiences, documenting children's learning, making sure each child has a friend, leading project-based studies, writing observation notes, completing checkpoints on time, sharing with colleagues, mentoring with other teachers, leading engaging read-alouds, taking learning outdoors, building classroom community, responding to children's need in the moment, helping families find resources, making sure children love learning, teaching children to share, supporting English language learners. And guess what? We never even talked about lunch or the restroom, right? So thinking about that day and being able to do all of those things, it's no wonder sometimes we become overwhelmed with everything we're supposed to do. But if we think about these times of day and we think about the real estate in the day and how we can integrate these components and incorporate them and plan for them and think about the ways we feel most successful in our classroom instruction and incorporate those successes in, yes, Sandra, I'm tired too, just reading it. At least you read it with your eyes. Sandra says she's tired just reading the list, right? It is a tongue twister. But I bet if we ask you, you could add other things to this list. Do you know of other things you do in the day? You might type those in the chat. But just be thinking of those things because they're important. So there are lots and lots of parts and pieces and schedules and variables. Yeah, bathroom breaks, right? Exactly. Because at the beginning of a school year for young children, you definitely have to do that. Emotional outbursts, planning for those. Exactly. Each and every one of these components makes the day either possible or overwhelming. And I want you to think about planning for the day, capitalizing on the real estate that you have, and making the most of those minutes. Making the most of those minutes for yourself and for your children, right? Copies and lesson plans, all of those things are really important. Yeah, this is a really great exercise, Sandra is saying, to do with your coworker. So thinking about all of those experiences and just brainstorming every single thing you have to do, every single expectation you have. I was working with a group of teachers in a state far from me, and they came up with, in a day, they had 54 things they felt responsible for. And they really had to take some looks at what we were thinking we were expected to do in one little school day. 54 things are just not possible. And so they had some conversations and found out that some of the things they thought they were responsible for implementing were not necessarily a required component. And so it's important to know what you're supposed to do. It's also important to know what is expected of you and what makes the day great for young children, right? What makes a successful day, and how do we plan for that and keep our sanity all at the same time? So what I'd like you to do is to take a piece of paper, and I'd like you to fold it into 4 quadrants. So just really simply, I'm going to grab a piece of paper. I'm going to show you. I just want you to fold it like this. And then fold it again. And then open that piece of paper back up. You should have 4 squares, just like this. Now I want you to number those squares. 1 in the top left, 2 top right, 3 bottom left, 4 bottom right, just like this, or just exactly as you see in the photograph, right? So expert is the top left. You are jam up at this activity. You know how to do this exceptionally well. 2 are the things that you're pretty good at, but you're feeling like you might need a little bit of growth in this area. 1, you could like teach seminars on it. You know how to do it hands down. Sick day, well day, you know, got to work 15 minutes late day, you can handle number 1. Number 2, if somebody's coming to observe you, you might feel a little anxious about it, but you'd be able to pull it out, right? You just have to do a little extra planning. 3 is like, I'm okay at this, but I really, really, really have to think about it. And 4 is like, I'm just overwhelmed by thinking about this part of instruction or in assessment. Maybe it's just, more than you know how to do. Okay, so I want you to think about those. I'm going to give you just a minute to think about and fill out that quadrant. So the expert one should be pretty easy to do. That should be the thing you love to do the most. And pretty good. Shouldn't be that hard. Okay and tough might be harder for us. The things that we have to admit. But remember, there's no risk here. This is your professional development plan for you. Nobody's going to look at this. I'm certainly not going to ask you to put that up there to share with anybody. Right? But the things you're good at, the things you're great at, the things you're okay at, and things that are really tough. And it's going to be important for you to write these down so that you can actually go through the cognitive process of reflecting on your own practice. Sandra says her tough one was having difficult family conversations, having difficult conversations with families, and how to do that, right? So that is a tough one, right? Okay, hopefully you've had a chance to get your ideas on paper, or at least you've got them in your head. Just you feel free to keep writing while we look at some, right? Here's what some of your colleagues have shared with us. Large group, this person felt exceptionally strong in large group, but in individualizing experiences, pretty good, but documenting learning maybe was an area of growth, and transitions were the thing that this person struggled with. So I want you to look at those and just sort of think about them for a second. This person said read alouds were her strength and building classroom community was their secondary strength. Involving families was something she needed some work on, and then supporting English learners was something she just really needed to grow in. And I say she, but it could have been a he. Then this person, this looks like this is on a paper towel. Studies were her strength. Individualizing experiences. Small groups were the area of beginning to need some assistance. And then ongoing use of or organizing materials. Right? She really struggled with that. This one is warm environments and behavior messages, right? Behavior being messages to us about how a child is feeling. Struggled a little with involving families, but really struggled with difficult conversations. Those difficult conversations can be a doozy. And this one was making sure children learn was her strength. Taking learning outside was another strength. But incorporating studies every day, she needed some growth. And she really struggled with open-ended questions. So let's take a little deeper dive and think about those. I want to go back to these, and I want to just look at this one. And I want you to think about the reciprocal nature of these relationships, right? Yeah, Vivian, a lot of people do struggle with goal documentation. And I think it's a matter of, this will be great for you because you can tackle that documentation process. If you take it in small chunks of how to go about getting better, then goal becomes very easy to use. If you look at this person's strength, her strength is large group, but her need, her strongest area of need is transitions. And so I want to ask you in the chat to think about large group and transitions and the relationship between those two elements. So thinking for just a second about transitions and how they relate to large group. If you're struggling with transitions, how will that impact large group? So go ahead and type that in the chat. Well, large group doesn't require any transitions within the large group time, but if you have a terrible transition to large group, can that impact? Yeah, there you go, Chrissy. Yeah, if there's not a smooth transition, right? If there's not an easy flow from one experience to another, then large group sometimes can be taken up with a lack of transition. Yep, a timer can be helpful. So boundaries, helping children think about boundaries and letting those boundaries be measurable by the child. Those things can be very helpful. Songs can also be a sense of time. In my classroom, I didn't use a timer. We used a song, and the children knew when they were getting to the end of the song that they needed to be close to finish to clean up. And after the song, it was one of their favorite songs, so they knew when it was getting close to the end. And then we had a super short song after that that sort of allowed them to just tidy up any last loose ends and then come to the floor. So those things can be helpful. So yes, transitions can have a big impact on large group. And if you're really great at large group, and thinking about what's good about what you do at large group can help you think about how to improve your transition. Nobody is great at large group if they don't have a strong connection with children. So that this person obviously knows and is able to think about how children react and respond and is able to build on that. And so those transition moments, she needs to be thinking about or considering those. But also looking at individualizing experiences. And documenting learning. Look how those two really play off of one another. Can you individualize without having documented learning? It's really hard. If one of your areas of growth needs to be documentation of learning, it would probably directly influence those individualizing experiences. Thinking about how to individualize through the evidence that you collect within documentation would be important. So thinking about the reciprocal nature of these here is really, really important. So let's look at this person's. Does anyone see this person's identified read alouds as their strength? I want you to look at 1 and 4. Thinking about the dual language learner as an individual and the dual language learner's perception of read aloud. So sometimes when we identify our weakness, right, the area we feel like we need to grow the most in, it also helps us identify an area in our strength that we might need to strengthen even further. If we're really great at read alouds, but we're not sure how to support English language learners, then we're probably not doing a strong job of supporting English language learners in the read aloud. And we need to begin to think about how to incorporate those ideas and strategies into read aloud. So that could be a great place to start. And 3, involving families relating to classroom community. Is it possible to have strong classroom community and not have strong family integration? It's possible, but with strong family involvement, would classroom community increase? So thinking about all of these variables and how they influence one another. Now, this person studies and individualization of experiences. So the person feels like they're strong in individualization, but need help in small group. Boy, that makes my mind go crazy with questions, right? And if you're great with studies and struggling with organization of materials, that also makes my mind go crazy with lots and lots of questions. So thinking about these, I want you to take a peek at your paper and do a moment of self-reflection about your experience 1, 2, 3, and 4, and the reciprocal nature of those relationships on your paper. So I'm going to stop sharing for a minute, and I am going to send us into, oh, I can't do that. It won't let me send it into breakout rooms because I have to be the actual.
I can do that for you.
Okay. So what you can do is just send everybody into just random breakout rooms. I think 4 to 5 people per room is as many as
You have 248 participants, and the max breakout rooms is 50. But
Yeah, I think it's going to work. If you just put it down to, I've had 265 and done it 4 to 5.
Okay.
Yeah, just go ahead and see.
All right, let's see.
You could do it as many as 6, I suppose. While you're listening to these breakout rooms for your breakout room directions, what I'd like you to think about is when you go into this room, I'd like you to give one another a solid 2 minutes to talk about your quadrants, each of your quadrants, and then how they relate to one another. So I want you to share out to each person. I want each person to share out. I want you to share out what were in your 4 quadrants and then how they relate. Okay. So, did we get a number of how many people will be in the room?
4 to 5.
4 to 5 people in the room. So we'll take 2 minutes, I think 10 minutes at the most in this breakout room. And then we'll let you know when it's time to come back. So if you'll send the invitation to go.
Mm. We have people returning. Just for you guys that might have had trouble in your breakout group, if anybody, folks who are on cell phones can't really participate in breakout rooms, it's really difficult. So, here we go.
Everybody coming back from the meetings? It seems like it's a good time for us to come back. I see everyone coming back. That's great.
Yeah. The breakout rooms will close, so people should be coming back in.
Nice, nice. Perfect. All right. And I think I'm pretty certain with the number of participants that Zoom will be fine with you showing your video. But that's up to the state if they don't want to do that. I do know I had 267 on the other day, and it worked just fine. But it's up to you guys. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and go back into our PowerPoint and share with you my screen. But I want you to, in the chat, share with me exactly, what did you learn from doing that with your colleagues? What did your peers say? Did you have similar things? Oh, you've lost the sound. Okay, someone is saying we've lost the sound. Am I talking to a small group? No, I should be talking to everyone. Okay, Olivia can hear me. I can hear, yeah. Good. Okay. Looks like the majority of people can hear. If you cannot hear, go ahead and let the LADOE person know, and I think that's how they're identified on this particular call. All right, so let's take a peek then at a deeper dive, right? A deeper dive into what you learned, right? When I think about the things that I'm good at and the things that I'm feeling challenged with, I very often have fireworks going off in my head. Lots and lots and lots of ideas of exactly what I could do to make something work or how I could make something work better. Lots and lots of ideas just go off in my head. I like to read a lot about early childhood education. I'm on Facebook groups with a lot of people in early childhood education. I like to read what other people write, and I also like to think about what questions would I ask them. Sometimes I actually ask the questions on Facebook, but I always have in my mind when I think about a particular pedagogical struggle or practice, I always have questions, whether it's a strength or whether it's a weakness, right? Those question of fireworks just go off. And I think I just really want to encourage you, and this is something that my colleague Donna Fowler brought about, is that sometimes we struggle with finding comfort in our own ignorance, right? I don't like to use the term ignorance because I think that's sort of an off-putting term, but I think if you think of when you become conscious that you have an area of incompetence, right? So we have unconscious incompetence, where we don't know, but then we have conscious incompetence, where we become aware that we don't know, and we have to become comfortable with that. And we have to continue asking ourselves questions about what we're doing so that we're certain we don't stay in unconscious incompetence, right? Because we don't want to miss out on realizing that we don't know something that we need to know. Yeah, Shannon, you're right. Once you're conscious of it, you can work on it, and you should just embrace it, right? The knowing is the largest part of the battle, knowing that you need to know, right? So when you get to conscious incompetence, embrace that, right? And think about that. Think about all the questions children come to us, right? Yes, Chameleon, you're right. Embracing what you don't know allows you to learn. Embrace the struggle. Angela, great points, right? So thinking about this, thinking about the children we serve, do you know that young children come to us in kindergarten full of questions? They ask, over 100 questions a day. And by the time they're in 5th grade, those questions are reduced to minimal. They're no longer asking questions. We take the wonder out of them, right? We take the wonder out of them by quieting them to get things finished, moving them on from task to task, hushing their innate curiosity about learning, about wondering. Right? We have to be very careful not to do that. We also have to be very careful not to squash our curiosity, right? If you look at this picture, this is a picture of heart surgery 30 years ago. I want to ask you the question, would you like your heart surgeon still performing the surgery that was considered appropriate 30 years ago? Or would you like them to use new and innovative techniques? Do you want technology from 30 years ago related to, Suzanne, I'm with you, sister, and Lindsay, right? I want the new techniques, new and innovative. So if we expect the medical profession to evolve and become innovative and to continue to question practice each and every day while they practice medicine, shouldn't we be doing the same in our classroom? Shouldn't we be using this quadrant exercise regularly to help us think? And then using research to help us inform how we evolve those ideas in those 4 quadrants, right? We want to look to the experts in the field. NAEYC offers us a wide variety of professional support materials that identify what research tells us about best practice in early childhood education. Oh, I got you. Sandra's answering question. Innovator in the field of heart surgery, she's saying. Pretty funny just to have him just hanging out. Oh, the guy in the back corner? Is that who y'all are talking about, Sandra? Yeah, he's just in there chilling. So thinking about that, that'd be like having Piaget come hang out in your classroom, right? He does look a little misplaced, but I guess if you're the father of heart surgery, you could probably hang out in any room. And any patient probably glad to have you there, right? So thinking about this evolution of progress and reflection and how we can make this work. Sounds like someone needs to mute themselves, and that they possibly have someone else in the room with them. So, all right. Y'all are cracking me up. A walkthrough. Okay. If he's in the old way, I bet he doesn't do it the old way. Be my guess. I bet he is pushing for the new way. All right, so let's think about that. Thinking about, evolution of practice, continuing to ask and answer questions, and to be curious about our profession. Now look at this room. The same evolution of practice should be taking place in this room as well. I see evidence of evolution of practice. First of all, I see 3 adults in one classroom. That makes me excited for those young children. I see children actively engaged. I see children able to make choices. There's still things I wonder about what's taking place there. But shouldn't we take our role as seriously as the role of the surgeon? Shouldn't we do active classroom investigation? Shouldn't we be part of active classroom research? Some of the best lessons I learned is when I decided I was going to take one space in my room and I was going to really do some action research and think about what was taking place there. If it was an area that children didn't maybe go to, I would try to see what was taking place there that maybe didn't attract the children. What was it about the materials that weren't attractive to them? And I did that by looking at what were children drawn to in other areas of the classroom. What kinds of things did they long for? What kinds of things were they choosing? Were they selecting? Well, yes, I see Moore says there aren't enough students in that room. Doesn't resemble. All right. But no, nobody's only had that few people in their classroom. It must have been, as they came back from the pandemic, only a few children, right? But no, most classrooms don't have that few children, and they could have 18 to 20 children in that classroom and still be as successful as they are in that particular photograph. So the number of children in that picture is of no relevance. Children can maneuver those options and those opportunities independently with 20 to 22 children in that room and one teacher. And I know they can because I've lived that experience. So thinking about what best practice tells us, this teacher has clearly integrated what research gave her as best practice. Choice, opportunity, integration. I see writing materials, drawing materials. I see gross motor experiences and fine motor experiences. I see teachers at eye level with children. I see children engaged in learning. I see lots of great experiences. Now, if you think about this, you could also look at this picture and find plenty of areas of growth. Right? What would this teacher's next question be? And for a good reflective practitioner, that practitioner is thinking of those things as she is engaged with those children. My next question is, why did this happen this way? Why did this happen that way? What can I do to get more children interested in A, B, C, or D, right? And right now, a question for all of us is, probably a heightened question is, how can I still allow children to utilize materials and stay safe, right? And to talk to one another and stay safe from germs. So thinking about that. One of the most important things, and this is our Cheerio picture, is that there's a story about a man training his dog or sharing Cheerios with his dog, and he'd throw one at the dog and the dog could catch one. He'd throw two and the dog could catch two, three and the dog could catch three. But if you throw the whole bag of Cheerios, then the dog ends up with none, right? So if you think about that, all of the Cheerios at once is an impossible task. But one or two or three new things at the same time, we can digest that, we can take it in, we can internalize it, and we can manage that. But we cannot manage an onslaught of new. So when you start to think about your own practice in your own classroom, what I really want, I want you to think, Johnny says, chunking the content, right? I want you to think about, what matters most, right? You've put that 1, 2, 3, and 4. And maybe you had multiple things in some of those, right? But which thing do you want to work on first? Which thing do you want to tackle first? And how is it related to things that you see as strengths in those other areas? How can you begin to tackle the fourth quadrant in the first and second and maybe third quadrant simultaneously? Because remember, we talked about the reciprocity of each of those quadrants. So if you know the thing you're struggling with the most is the thing that's in that level 4, how does it then connect to 1, 2, and 3? And how can you work simultaneously to increase your strategy within all of the quadrants by focusing on one small element about the fourth quadrant? Breaking that element down that you see as a weakness into small chunks that are digestible, 1 to 2 Cheerios at a time, not the entire bag. You'll get there if you think about that systematically. It also helps a great deal to write those things down. Write them down so that you can be accountable for them. Set yourself a time frame, right? Within 2 weeks, I will have, and then write these goals out, right? And then hold yourself accountable when that time passes, because eating a whole bag of Cheerios, well, for some of us might not be such a struggle, but thinking about it bite at a time, right? It's kind of like when you're trying to lose weight. If you think about the whole number, sometimes that's a little overwhelming. But if you set yourself a smaller goal and you reach that smaller goal and start adding those smaller goals up over time, you can be much more successful. Dave Ramsey talks about that in his, saving money plans. He calls it debt snowball, right? You're going to pay off the smallest debt first. Then you're going to take that money that you're paying on that, add it to all the rest of the money that you're paying on the second smallest bill, and then slowly get to the end of those bills. How to bite it off in bite-sized chunks rather than just thinking about the whole thing and feeling overwhelmed, right? So when you get to the top of the mountain, I want you to think about the top of the mountain is not just getting to the top to plant your flag, right? It's getting to the top to really understand the experience that got you there, and to think about that experience as a way that it will continue to help you grow, right? Many of us have gotten to the top of proverbial mountains in our life. Right now, I feel like we're getting so close to the summit of the mountain of COVID-19, right? I don't know about y'all, but some days I wonder if I'm going to have the stamina to get to the top. And I'm really going to feel like planting my flag when I get to the top of that. But what we have to understand in struggle is that each struggle prepares us for our next struggle, right? And that if we take these opportunities to let them inform us and guide us in knowing how to better deal with the next struggle, we'll be much better off. Yep. Self-reflection is really important, and it's the ladder to get us to the top for sure. Thank you so much, R. Quinn, for sharing that. Yeah, one day at a time. See, we all know simple phrases that help us get here. But remember, it's not just the planting of the flag that matters, right? Not just the planting of the flag that matters, but the process. So keeping that in mind and thinking about your questions. You need to have good questions. If you're not asking questions about your practice, if you're not asking questions about the influence of your implicit and explicit bias in the classroom, these are things you should think about, right? Sometimes we don't understand our biases, and sometimes we have to seek literature or professional learning opportunities to help us become more aware of where we may have biases that we're unaware of, right? And biases that may be entering into the classroom. And those may be simply a bias about your competence in a particular area, 1, 2, 3, or 4 on your quadrants, right? You need to be thinking about what are your questions, talking to, yes, Sandra, trusted partners in the thinking realm. Who is somebody you can really say, I'm just really wondering about that. I keep thinking back to the teacher who said she was great at whole group or story time, but not great with English language learners. And I just keep thinking to myself, wonder how the English language learners feel at story time. And maybe she has great strategies for that. Maybe she's feeling insecure about her support of English language learners in other times of the day. Maybe she uses puppets. Maybe she uses picture cards. Maybe she's bilingual. I'm doubting it if that's her fourth quadrant, but maybe she has something that she's utilizing. to serve that population better. But I think it's really important. A thought partner, Sandra is absolutely on to something. It's how I've continuously grown throughout my career. Currently, the gal that came up with the Cheerio scenario and the surgery photo, Donna, she's my thought partner. We hold one another accountable on a lot of things. And if I feel like I'm maybe getting out of control about something, I'll call it and say, hey, I'm feeling pretty strongly that this is not the right thing that's taking place. Help me do a self-check here so I can know how to sort of wrap my head around this a little bit better. What can we do? What are the variables we control? What are the variables we don't have any control over? And can you suggest any resource that I might find the answers to? And it's just, I have been fortunate enough my entire, Sandra's saying educators make the best thought partners. Yep. My entire career, I've had somebody that I could lean on, somebody that I could ask those questions. And when I've been in places of employment where I don't have a thought partner currently beside me in a classroom, right, I seek out my colleagues in other areas for their help, right? Always looking to gain insight. And I know you are doing that too. But just remember, it could be tricky. You could have forgotten about how important it is to connect with your colleague in this particular time, because with the pandemic, we haven't been able to be physically on campus and have those bump into conversations. And you may be struggling with that. I highly encourage you to reach out via Zoom, FaceTime, all of those things to check in with your colleagues and do some of this thought partnering about how to become better. Because there have been times in our career, right? Our friend Beth shares a story about this. She talks about, 20 years ago, she thought she was doing the best theme ever and that people were celebrating her, being the best teacher on the planet. And she was doing dinosaur themes. And at the time, she just didn't know. I mean, dinosaurs, children loved it. They were flourishing in her classroom, doing great. Who hasn't done a dinosaur theme if you're as old as the dinosaurs, which I am, right? Oh goodness. Sandra says she had a student ask her why she drank so much coffee when it made her breath smell yucky. Great question. That's what gum is for, right, Sandra? And breath mints, I guess. They'll tell you anything, right? But thinking about this best theme ever idea, right? It's okay if what we did 5 years ago, 2 years ago, this past year, if we reflect on it and we decide maybe it's not best practice, it's okay, because we did the best we knew to do at that time. And now integrating new knowledge, new concepts, new ideas, we can move forward. We don't have to mourn not being perfect to begin with, because there is no such thing, right? It's the journey. So I want you to think for just a few minutes, what are the things that you can do that you might be wondering about in your classroom in preparation for next year, or in serving families over somebody's students couldn't believe they didn't have a Twitter. Yeah. Over the next few months in the summer, maybe you're going to continue to serve your students over the summer. Maybe you're wondering how you can do that. Maybe you're wondering about, if we start back school and we're not physically face-to-face in school, how you're going to serve your children. Maybe you've realized after COVID, in connecting with families more directly, that maybe some of those strategies could be helpful when COVID is not part of what's taking place. Surely you have new questions. And I want you to just think about those. I'd like you to write down at least 5 questions. 5 questions you're wondering about on your paper. Nakia's saying she thinks she might like to add some sort of video conferencing. Yeah. EL manuals for teachers and students to support both. Yeah. Oh, yes, I see Sandra celebrating Elizabeth's willingness to let it go, even if it worked for 29 years, letting it go and accepting something new because new is better, right? 29 years ago, I bet heart surgery was super successful. We have to think like that. Y'all just think of the heart surgeon. Just think of him. Think of the questions you might have. Yeah, I think Cynthia's bringing up a good thing. Just what do we do in mask and gloves that, you know, when we're having to cover ourselves in such a different way, how will we still have a human touch? Yep. How do you reach the students with no working phone, internet, computers, and sometimes not even an address? Right. The dark side of the digital divide. So I think, Jessica, you're bringing up a lot of good points here. I've worked with lots of different people through COVID, and some of the things that people are doing are just so super innovative. People have taken buses into communities to provide Wi-Fi for the families. So they've had a Wi-Fi capability on the bus that sent out a signal to families and in the district, and the district children could log into the Wi-Fi from the bus. I realize that in some situations you can't just leave an unattended bus because it won't be there when you come back. But I think, you know, there are lots of different things communities are doing, and I think that people are really trying to think about that digital divide and to lessen it, right? It's really important. It's important to have these questions. It's important to think on them, but even more important, it's important to think of a plan. So I want you to look at those 5 questions that you have. Pick the top one. Pick the top one. And I want you to think about 3 action items for yourself. 3 action items for yourself. So I see a question: how will children learn to interact with their peers if they can't come to school? So I want you to think about that question, and I want you to think about, as a teacher, where you have control, where you don't have control, and how you can engage families in thinking about that very challenge. There are a lot of innovative educators out there who have held Zoom play dates with their children in classrooms, where they've had to take turns speaking on Zoom, where they've had to build block towers out of cups on their floor while the Zoom camera kept it going. And then they came back and shared with the group how they built their tower, why they built their tower that particular way, and had conversations over it. There's lots of innovation available. I encourage you to seek that out. But for your goal, I want you to write 3 action items, and then I want you to set a date for each of those action items. When is it due to you personally? And how will you hold yourself accountable for that? Are you going to write it on the calendar? Are you going to set that in your Google Calendar? In your Microsoft Office calendar? Will you remind yourself a week before it's due? How will you get to completion? And can you get yourself an accountability partner? Is there someone else on this Zoom call who might also be interested in this? And could you connect with them? So we're going to take a few minutes now to take some questions. If you have questions, we'd love to hear from them. from you from the field. Oh, Nakia's going to put timers at her phone. Good girl. Good. Any questions? Well, I hope that you will take your quadrant 1 and build up 2, 3, and 4 with the strengths you've identified within quadrant 1, always thinking about how to get how the relationship between 1, 2, 3, and 4 can build you as a teacher. I also want you to know that Teaching Strategies is so grateful to each and every one of you, and on behalf of them, I would like to take this opportunity to thank you for what you do for children each and every day. What you do as an early childhood teacher makes a difference in the lives of children, not just while they're in your classroom, but as they grow into an adult, as they have children, you impact their children and you impact their children's children. There's research to show that high quality early childhood education has a multi-generational impact. And I am just so grateful to have high quality teachers engaging with young children, thinking about their practice, reflecting on their pedagogy, and in trying to create professional plans to improve their instructional practices each and every day. So thank you on behalf of Teaching Strategies. Look forward to seeing you again soon in Louisiana. Best of luck to all of you. Stay healthy and stay well.
All right. Thank you very much for sharing that great knowledge and information with us. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure.